In the name of God, the most compassionate, my name is Robert McCaw. I'm the National Government Affairs Director with the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. Thank you all for coming here today. This news conference and rally follows today's U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in Richmond, Virginia, hearing on arguments over whether civil rights groups, and many of them are here today, can proceed in challenging the Trump administration's Muslim ban based on its discriminatory intent. Earlier today, rally sponsors turned out in great numbers to pack the courts and show that there is a real public concern against the Muslim ban and that we are standing united against it. Today's events also mark the third anniversary of Trump's Muslim ban executive order, which was issued actually 3 years ago to yesterday, January 27th, 2017. As we hold this press conference and rally, we await the Trump administration's proposed Muslim ban expansion, possibly to even be announced today. To kick off this press conference and rally, we have several prepared statements that will be read aloud. Following these statements, we can take questions from the press or do one-on-one interviews. Our first speaker is going to provide a little bit of context for today's hearing. They are the legal director for Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, Richard Katz.
Yep, that's me.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes, this morning the court heard oral argument in 3 challenges to the Muslim ban. As you heard, I'm Richard Katz. I'm the legal director at Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Along with Muslim advocates in the law firm Covington and Burling, I'm counsel to the plaintiffs in one of those cases, Iranian Alliances Across Borders Against Trump. The other 2 cases are International Refugee Assistance Project against Trump and ZACZOC against Trump. In a minute, you'll hear from some of our clients, our partners and allies, the wonderful folks hearing about what people have been made to suffer because of the Muslim ban over the past 3 years on the day after the 3rd anniversary of the ban. Before that, though, it's my job to take a moment to describe the legal proceedings with apologies. So the U.S. Supreme Court previously heard a case involving a challenge that the state of Hawaii brought to the Muslim ban. It did that on what's called a preliminary injunction, which means that the lower federal courts had determined that even at the very, very beginning of the case, before there was any opportunity to collect evidence or anything else, Hawaii had already shown that it was likely to prove that the Muslim ban is unconstitutional and couldn't stand. That's actually what court after court held, including in the 3 cases that are involved here today. Now, in the U.S. Supreme Court, 4 justices agreed with that position. 5 other justices, however, said that they didn't think that Hawaii had already shown that it would ultimately win the case. But the Supreme Court made clear that the cases could continue, that the folks challenging the ban could collect evidence and prove what we all know to be true, which is that the Muslim ban is about banning Muslims. It's straight up religious discrimination, the kind of thing that is not supposed to go on in this country. Now the government is trying to deny us our day in court. For 3 years, we've been asking the government for information showing any legitimate reason for the ban, any reason other than anti-Muslim bias. And what the government keeps saying is, it's not a Muslim ban, it's something else. Don't pay any attention to what President Trump says. Just trust us, it's something. You can't see the evidence, but trust us. The U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland said that that's not how things work. It might be difficult to prove a case like this, but we get to try in all the ways that every litigant gets to do that. We get to see what the government did and why it did it, and we get to try to show the court what's really going on here. The government didn't like that answer, so it came to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, again saying our clients shouldn't get their day in court. As we argued today, that's not how the courts are supposed to work. That's not how our system of law works. That's not how the government is supposed to act. We'll continue to hold the government accountable on behalf of our clients and all the people who are being cruelly separated from their families. Now I want you to hear from some of the other folks involved in the case, including some of the plaintiffs who can tell you a little bit about what they and the communities affected have experienced.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Iman Karazi. She's a plaintiff, an Iranian American who has been separated from her family because of the Muslim ban. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mana Karazi. I'm an Iranian American community organizer and community leader. I was born in Iran and my family moved me here when I was 2 as a refugee. It's particularly troubling for me understanding that this ban would have prevented my family from coming here and from me existing in this space. As an American, I understand that these fights take a long time and that ultimately this country will decide, just as thousands of Americans today, 3 years ago, stood up in the airports, flooded across this country and reminded us that they don't stand for this ban and that they understand that this is hatred that has become a policy that is directly impacting me and my family and my community. Before the Trump administration took office, I focused just on youth, and I organized youth camps and I organized community spaces. And when this ban took effect, the troubling effect, the devastating effect it had on my community pushed me to be a part of this battle. Today, as we stand here having a conversation about what's happening, and we talk about it in very legal jargon that honestly, for a lot of us, goes beyond our understanding. What I do know is that the real life implications of this ban mean that there are thousands of American families that are divided. There are spouses that are kept apart that are right now determining, are they going to live in a third country? Are they going to have to move to a country that is dealing with state repression and violence and all sorts of turmoil, which is what these countries on the ban list are facing. We live in this country and have to deal with every single day the witnessing of the news, the alarming, troubling reports that we see about our families, and understanding that in the midst of all of this, we are fighting for our humanity. We are trying to remind not just the American people, because I think they understand that, but I think we are also trying to remind our members of Congress and those that are in the courts making these decisions that they have real implications on us. They are keeping people from getting their medication. They're keeping people from being able to live the most important milestones. If you are dealing with a funeral, but having half of your family not even be able to attend it, or having to decide if you're going to go into one of the countries that makes the news every day and deal with your own safety as an American, these are the decisions that my community has to deal with every single day. We have to decide about the funerals we're going to miss, the births that our grandparents aren't going to be a part of, the weddings that are going to have many of the relatives absent from, every single milestone, from the graduations of the students who live in this country to every single moment, whether it's tragic or celebratory in your family. This policy is dictating that I must celebrate or experience that tragedy separate from mine. Ultimately, I want to remind us all that this is, in the end, becoming a justification for the hatred that's affecting the youth that I work with that feel more and more demonized every single day. It's dealing with the students that live in the schools, the families that have to ride the subways, all of us living in our communities and constantly being told that not only are we not a part of this country, but we are somehow a threat because of the faith we like to practice or the identity that we want to claim. As an American, I've grown up with the stories from the civil rights era of the South, the place I call home, and I understand that there are communities that have had to go through these same challenges and they have had to fight for their humanity, and that I'm building my experience of my community on top of that. But I need us to understand that this era of hatred that is plaguing this country at this moment, it will end. And every single one of us who are standing here, we are playing a role in that. We are determining how long that terrible chapter will last, how much violence has to be committed against our communities and our families before this chapter ends. I know that this chapter will end. As an American, I believe this chapter will end, and I will continue to stand here and fight for the people that don't get to sit in the courtrooms, but have these decisions made about them every single day. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is with the Council on American Islamic Relations. It's its National Executive Director, Neha Awad.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning. 3 years later, they try to make us forget the main cause behind the Muslim ban. The government tried to argue national security justification that the lawyers and the plaintiffs cannot see and cannot challenge. However, we know, and it should not be very difficult to remember, that the anti-Muslim animus is rooted in the travel ban by Mr. Trump. Let's just remember that when he was running for the office of the presidency, he promised a total and complete shutdown of Muslims, I say Muslims, entering the United States. He did not say Christians, he did not say Jews, he did not say Buddhists, he said Muslims. He has been targeting the American Muslim community and Muslims in general. In the first chance when he became president, he surrounded himself by anti-Muslim experts and advisors, including his national security advisor, who said Islam is a cancer. The president himself said that Islam hates us. All his policies about Muslims have been discriminatory and targeting them for degrading and disfavored treatment. So it does not take a lawyer or a genius to know that the travel ban is an anti-Muslim ban. So outside the court argument, we know that this has been unfortunate event in our lives as Muslims, as Americans, that this administration is trying to play games with the courts by adding 2 or 3 non-Muslim countries to play around the legalities to justify the Muslim ban and potentially expanding the Muslim ban. So we know, guys, that unfortunately courts do not and have not all the time sided with people who have been oppressed. So we witness another time that the courts may not be in our favor. And that's why eventually the solution is in the hands of the American people. And that's why we will continue to fight. We will continue to fight any playing around the rules or any attempts to justify the continuation and the expansion of the Muslim ban. It is a Muslim ban, it is an anti-Muslim measure. Let's tell it like it is, and we will fight it until it's over. This travel ban, as Iman has said, has impacted the lives of millions of innocent people. The government argued that it only targeted 8% of the Muslim population, where guess what? The United States cannot exclude 92% of the Muslim population. Why? Because the United States has strategic, economic, and military interests with those countries. They have targeted the poor countries who are Muslim. So I hope that all of us will unite to fight anti-Muslim discrimination by this administration, and hopefully the court will wake up to realize that what we realize, that this is anti-Muslim animus rooted travel ban, and it should end whether now or later. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're joined by Delegate Ibrahim. Samira, please join us.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to Richmond. We obviously have federal courts, and we also have state legislature right next door, so that's where I'm at working right now, and I just wanted to lend support for this cause of controlling the problem of discrimination as much as possible. I think it goes beyond just our systems that we have right now in place with the Muslim ban. We also have problems with our legal immigration system as well. Let's not forget that it's very difficult to become a citizen in this country. It's very difficult to come to the U.S. I myself come from a family that has experienced the very early forms of what I think is the Muslim ban. My father not allowed re-entry into the United States for 11 years, battling it in the federal court system, eventually winning and coming back to the United States. But it's a very long-winded affair, and it shouldn't be the case for other families, any family across the board. As many of the speakers earlier have spoken, there's tremendous impact on people's lives beyond just the fact of travel. It's familial, it's public health. It affects us in Virginia greatly. It affects our economy. This is a country built on the back of immigrants, and it will continue to be built on the back of immigrants until the day it hopefully gets to a point where it's built on the back of everybody. And we'll eventually get there, but immigrants are a quintessential part of our economy, of our structures, our social values. We have many ways of appreciating that, and we have many ways to reconcile with the fact that immigrants are such a crucial part of our fabric. This is one of them. The Muslim ban should not be in place, and I urge you all to continue the effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Harsha Patel. He is the counsel to the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice in New York Law.
Hey everyone, my name is Harsha. As Robert said, I'm a counsel at the Brennan Center and counsel in the Zakzak case. Thanks so much to everyone for making such a strong show of support here today and for your leadership in efforts to get rid of the Muslim ban. As we all remember, attempting a Muslim ban was the first major action this administration took, just 7 days in, and it set the tone for what was to come. Like the family separation policy, the ban would go on to tear loved ones from each other. Like the census citizenship question, it would be defended by lying in court. And like all too many other actions, it would once again remind us the damage that can be done by having an unchecked president run amok. The most jarring feature of the Muslim ban, though, is that its very purpose is to advertise bigotry. It sends a clear message to Muslims and immigrants, both at home and abroad. You are not welcome in the U.S., and the country does not care about your suffering. Not only is that profoundly un-American, as other impacted folks have pointed out, real people bear the consequences. Through September of last year, the ban had been keeping more than 1,300 kids continents away from their parents in the United States. Over 3,400 husbands, wives, and spouses away from their partners in America, and more than 3,000 parents from their sons and daughters in the States. And that's just a very small percentage of the affected people. This is to say that the Muslim ban is only doing more damage every day that passes. With the public's attention divided on everything from impeachment to the upcoming presidential election, we've got to keep working to recapture that shock we felt when it was first announced, as we saw reflected in mass protests across airports and across cities in the country. That's the intensity we'll need to destine the Muslim ban for the dark chapters of history in law books, like the Japanese internment and like separate but equal eventually were. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harsha. Next, we have Muslim Advocate Staff Attorney Nimrod Osman.
Good morning. As Robert said, my name is Nimrod Osman, and I'm a staff attorney with Muslim Advocates. And along with Americans United and Covington and Burling, I represent the EOB plaintiffs. And the EOB plaintiffs are DOEs 1 through 6, the organization Iranian Alliances Across Borders, and ISF. We're here today on the steps of the Fourth Circuit, where we won in December of 2017 because we're still fighting. We're still fighting this administration that separates families. We're still fighting an administration that is racist and anti-Muslim to its core. And we're still fighting an administration that even now, as the president is roiled in impeachment, seeks to expand the ban and expand the harm that it's inflicted on countless families. We're here today also because of the brave plaintiffs in each of these cases. We represent sisters separated from brothers, mothers separated from sons and daughters, and EOB and ISF, which are organizations advocating for cultivating community and for the Iranian diaspora. Each of these plaintiffs in each of these cases has been injured by the Muslim ban. They have been discriminated against because of their race, because of their religion, and because of their national origin, and denied their constitutional rights to free speech and free association. And each has stood up to fight against it. We're here today also because of people like the plaintiffs and like you, who even in the face of the worst heartbreak, keep fighting. And today, we hope that the Fourth Circuit finds itself on the right side of the law and the right side of history and rules to let this litigation continue. And no matter how they rule. We will keep fighting for the communities impacted, for the families separated by this unconstitutional Muslim ban. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Staff Attorney Max Wolson with the National Immigration Law Center, NILC.
Good morning. My name is Max Wolson, and I'm a staff attorney with the National Immigration Law Center. And I am proud to be counsel on the IRAP case, along with the ACLU. For the past 3 years, the Trump administration has succeeded in using hate to separate spouses from one another, families from one another, siblings from one another, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, grandparents. As you got to hear, it has had real consequences, keeping people apart from both the greatest celebrations and greatest tragedies of life. And they've gotten to do that for 3 years, following through on their unequivocal statements that they were doing it out of hate, doing it out of hatred of Muslims. While the Muslim ban might have been the administration's first time attacking immigrants of color, it was not the last. We have seen a near daily barrage from this administration of immigration policies, each tied together by the fact that they target Muslims and immigrants of color and essentially nobody else. We've seen them attempt to penalize public benefits receipt, trying to keep people from having housing and having medical assistance and having nutrition assistance. We've seen them separating children from their families at the border in hopes that their cruelty would be seen as a good policy choice. We've seen them talk about walls and keeping people apart. We've seen nothing but attempts to target immigrants of color in this country, and the Muslim ban is the foundation upon which all of that rests. Today in the court, we attempted to explain to the judges that this case was not over the day that the Supreme Court ruled in Trump versus Hawaii. We attempted to explain to them that ruling on a preliminary issue does not mean that you are declaring implausible claims that are so clearly the case, that you are not implausible when you allege that a president who says he's going to ban Muslims comes into office and does that within a week of being in office. While we are confident that the law is on our side and we are confident that in the end of this litigation we will prevail, we also understand that this has to be fought in more than just the courts. So while we will continue this fight, we also encourage people, the same people who we are strengthened by, the hundreds of thousands who marched in the streets, who showed up at airports, who said that this hate will not represent us. We encourage those same people to press for a legislative solution to this as well. Speaker Pelosi announced yesterday that there will be a markup on the No Ban Act, an act that would prevent this ban, that would remove this ban, and would prevent other hateful bans of this sort from being put into place. We encourage people of conscience, people who marched in those streets, people who are standing on this sidewalk, and people who are hearing this message to contact your legislators and say that you want the No Ban Act passed and that you want it done without any changes to it. Because we can deal with this in the courts and we will continue to have that fight, but we'll fight it on every ground that we can. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Aman Bocadei, a staff attorney with the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues and to the attorneys and to everybody for showing up here this morning. So my name is Aman Bocadei. I'm the senior staff attorney at the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Since this ban has come into place, we have been representing people all across the world who've been stranded. And we all know that this is a Muslim ban, and it's a ban that's directed at refugees in particular. And it's directed against people who are leaving the worst humanitarian disasters on the planet. Yemen, Syria, Libya, these are countries that are suffering unspeakable pain. And instead of taking them in, we actually stigmatize them and we say, you're not welcome here, even if you have family here. And this is a ban that's not only separating families, but it's personal. It's affecting human beings in our own communities every day. I want to say a couple of words about the justices and the Supreme Court. I have some words for Justice Roberts. Justice Roberts, you overturned Korematsu in Trump v. Hawaii. Korematsu was the case in which the Supreme Court, of course, upheld the horrific internment of Japanese Americans. And in this very opinion, Trump v. Hawaii, Justice Roberts had the gall to say that he's overturning Karamazov as he upholds one of the most disgraceful policies in American history. So we don't believe you when you tell us that you don't believe that Karamazov was the right decision, because we ultimately read your opinion, which is an opinion that upholds bigotry, and it upholds something that has nothing to do with protecting America or with national security. So that's what I have to say to the Supreme Court on that. And I also want to say to Justice Breyer, his dissent was very helpful, because I want to say a couple of things about the waiver program, which I think was should have come up, or hopefully will come up. But the reality is that Justice Breyer, in his dissent in Trump v. Hawaii, called out the waiver program for what it is. It's nothing but window dressing. And the reality is that less than 5% of the waivers out there that are filed are actually issued. So again, if this is really about national security, if this is really a policy that is serious, they would have never, that wouldn't be the case. It's a program that's designed to stigmatize and to encourage this administration's central signature policy, which is to gut our entire immigration, asylum, refugee system, and to basically only allow certain people who look a certain way, who believe in certain things, into this country. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have the director of the Immigrants' Rights Project with the ACLU, Omar Jadwat.
Thanks. It's been a long time, and a lot of people have already said a lot of the things I would have wanted to say, probably better than I could have. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is, over these last 3 years, we've fought in court, but the thing that has, the power that people have found in themselves to explain what the problems are with this ban and to fight against it is the victory, right? Is a victory even in the face of the ban continuing. And the challenge for us, whether it's through this litigation, through legislation in Congress, through organizing our friends and our neighbors, whatever it is, the challenge for us is to take the victories that we have scored over the last 3 years, the power that we've built, the understanding, I think, that, wasn't out there 4 years ago about the importance of these targeted communities to the broader American community, to take those victories and build on them so that we can look back 3 years from now and say, for everything that happened, for as bad as it was, for as painful as it was for all of our families and for our neighbors, for as bad as it was, we can look back now and say, we're in a better place now. We're in a better place now than we would have been without this whole episode. And I believe so strongly that we can get there. But we got to keep fighting. People have to keep coming out. And we have to look for every opportunity we have, whether it's through the courts or even, more importantly, through the other means that we all have at our disposal to try to change things. So thank you so much for coming out. We're all going to keep fighting.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the speakers that came out, the media that's come out, and especially all the supporters that packed the court today and are standing with us, holding signs and standing with us in solidarity. This fight is not over, but this press conference is, and speakers are available for one-on-one interviews. So thank you.